Hey there, Sharon Horne-Ellstrom here. Welcome to day 27 of our Get Your Goals annual challenge. We're doing one thing every day this year that helps you get what you want and me get what I want as well. Today, we are talking about lessons learned. Lessons learned from the tests we did on our framework yesterday, as well as lessons learned going forward throughout this challenge. One of the biggest and most important things I've learned in my life is that if I don't learn the lesson that an experience is there to show me or teach me, I will repeat that experience. Meaning if I make a mistake and I don't learn the lesson from that mistake, and I can think of so many areas of my life that I've made lots of mistakes in that I didn't learn the first time or the 10th time or sometimes the 100th time before it went through my thick skull and I realized, oh my gosh, this is what I need to see from this situation. And then after that, once I figured that out and I saw and really consciously was aware of the lesson I needed to learn, I didn't have to make those mistakes anymore. Doesn't mean I don't make a lot of mistakes still, because I have, like all of us, lots of lessons to learn throughout my lifetime. So today, and my favorite way, I guess I got a couple of questions today for you. Number one, do you have a way to capture your lessons learned? I keep journals. I've kept them ever since I was a little girl. I kept diaries when I was young and wrote a lot. And then I did burn those before I got married. And then when my kids were a little old, my son was going to be able to read, I made sure I burned all my cards and things from my ex-husband, because, you know, some of that stuff you don't want your kids to find. So I document things. I write things down a lot. But my favorite way to think about and evaluate situations and experience is to ask questions. I ask myself questions. So I have a couple of go-to questions that I personally use, and I would challenge you to come up with at least one question that you can ask yourself whenever you have an experience that you want to learn from, that helps you to really have the aha, have the epiphany, have the realization of what that situation was there to show you. You know, all of our experiences, all of them, the good, the bad, and the ugly, are happening to us and in our lives or around us to show us something. Sometimes they're to show us what to do. Sometimes they're to show us that we're on the wrong path. Sometimes they're to show us that we're on the right path. Sometimes they're just to show us a lesson about life and humanity that we have not been living necessarily. I can give some examples about that, about how I learned about judgment and being judgmental, and the impact letting go of all that judgment had on my life as well as the lives of people around me. So I'd like to have a few questions that I always ask myself whenever I do something. So after yesterday's experiment and yesterday's test of my framework, I wanted to figure out, okay, well, what did I learn from doing that? Well, I asked myself questions. Number one, like, what did I learn from doing that? What did that experience teach me or show me? What worked? What didn't work? What made me, how did things make me feel? If things made me stressed out about my framework, then I need to tweak those things, because I don't want to ever feel bad about something that's supposed to make me feel good and make my life easier. So how does it make me feel? I'm always tapping into, because our feelings are the windows to if things are for us or not, if we're moving in the direction we want to move or not, if we're making progress or not. Our feelings are one of the first indicators of that. If we feel nervous or upset or uneasy about something, then it's probably not for us. So I asked myself a couple of questions. What was good about the process or the experience? What didn't go so well about the process or experience? What felt uncomfortable or hard? If it feels hard or a struggle, it's not for me, right? We think that because other people tell us that life is hard and a struggle and painful and all these things. But guess what? All of those feelings are a choice. And I choose not to participate. I choose not to do things that I have to struggle with. And when I first start something new, I might have some challenges and have to figure out how to do it. But that's not a struggle, because I replace struggle with curiosity. I'm like, okay, well, how could I do this? How could I make this easier? Or how could I make it fun? But then the second thing I say is, how did it go? What worked? What didn't work? And then how did it make me feel? And when I ask myself just those two questions, I learn a lot about a process that I'm trying to install in my life. Yesterday's process, one of the biggest things I learned was it's way too complicated, right? It's way too complicated for my comfort level and my wanting to automate a process going forward for the rest of the year with respect to how do I deal with goals. So guess what I'm doing this weekend? I am decomplicating that. I think it's a great, awesome process to do once a year, but I definitely don't want to do it on a regular basis. I definitely don't need to or want to. And I've got some ways to make it so that I don't need to do that, so that I can do it just once a year. And I can decide, do I want to do it at the end of the year, beginning of the new year? Totally depends on how it makes me feel, right? So what's our action item today? Think about your experience yesterday testing out your framework. And if you didn't do it, if you didn't create a framework for yourself, if you didn't test it out, I challenge you to do it. Or if you don't want to create your own, if maybe you're like, man, I'm not creative, I'm busy, life is too busy for me to have to come up with my own framework. We talked about 15 different ones, right? You can just pick and use one of those, or pick the pieces of it and make it your own. I already have certain frameworks that are my automatic go-to frameworks. Who, what, where, when, why, and how. The life framework. BHAG, I've done BHAG for a long time. I think we should have huge goals because they motivate and drive me. But some people are actually demotivated by big goals they don't think they can ever achieve. But I have to be making progress all the time and continually improving. So for me, they work perfectly, but for you, they might not. So today, what are we going to do? We're going to look at our experience yesterday, testing our framework, and say, well, what did I learn from that? And then decide, how just this year are you going to capture lessons learned from the action items and the experiences that we do? If you didn't do anything but had a notebook where every day you just wrote down, hey, what did I learn from today's lesson? Did I learn anything? Did I take the action item? Did I do the action item? And if I didn't, why didn't I do that? Maybe it made me feel uncomfortable. And so I decided I don't want to think about goals in my physical well-being today or whatever. But if you just did that, this would become one of the best little manuals about yourself, or one of the best records of what works for you and what doesn't that you could possibly have. So again, I'm encouraging you to write things down. But today, just lessons learned. We're going to do lessons learned a lot this year. Every month for sure, we're going to talk about the lessons that we learned in each of the different life framework areas. So that means at least 9 times more, we're going to talk about lessons learned. One of my favorite things to do is treat myself as my own science experiment. That only works if I actually figure out what worked, what didn't work, and then I actually document and learn from that. If I don't learn from it, then why bother even asking the questions? All right, if I can help you anyway with this, if you've never thought about the lessons that you've learned from things, talk about a way to move forward and advance your life faster than the people around you, because the vast majority of people don't ever sit back and say, okay, well, what was that experience there to show me? I did this actually on road rage or frustration in traffic, because I used to spend a lot of time in traffic when I was in corporate America. And I knew that it wasn't doing me any good. The other people in the cars in the morning or at night in traffic weren't upset. Some of them were, right? Some of us get road rage, some of us don't. And so I did that on traffic frustration, and I found ways to make my commute actually one of my favorite times of the day, because it was my alone time. And when you're a young mom and working a corporate career and running business on the side, you don't get much peace and quiet and time to yourself. So I learned to appreciate that time. That was my lesson learned. If I can help you anyway with this, hit me up. Otherwise, figure out what you learned from doing this exercise yesterday, assuming that you tested it. If you didn't test it, over the next couple of days, please test it. Otherwise, I will, if people tell me they want me to, I will pick a framework. Like I said, I'm going to simplify mine for the rest of the challenge and come up with okay, what is if I'm looking at a focused area each month, what is my process for the month, focusing on that area with respect to goals? And so I'm going to come up with a much simpler process than me complicate things, than the complicated process, which works great for once a year, but it's overkill for every day. And it's definitely overkill for even each life segment area. All right, have an awesome day, and I will, of course, be with you tomorrow.